graveyard is a place of peace, a final resting place, a tranquil place where we say our last goodbyes to the ones that we have loved and lost. At least most graveyards are. Greyfriars Graveyard is located in the heart of the city of Edinburgh. It has 800 tombs, but was once used as a mass burial ground for 100,000 plague victims before any official burials took place. Experts predict there to be between 250,000 and 500,000 people's remains under its grounds. It is crammed so tightly with bodies that the graveyard sits higher than the roads that run alongside it. Greyfriars Graveyard was founded in the August of 1562, just after the Franciscan friary was dissolved. It was from this that the Greyfriars acquired its name, as the monks wore grey habits. Greyfriars is said to be thriving with paranormal activity, with over 3,000 eyewitness accounts of poltergeist-type hauntings being reported by visitors. People have claimed to experience burns appearing on their skin, along with scratches, teeth marks, and in some 107 reported occasions, people actually say they were rendered unconscious by an unseen force. If these stories are true, then it's hardly surprising with the dark and cruel past, such as Greyfriars. During the reign of King Charles II, he enforced his religious practices on the whole of England and Scotland by introducing a common book of prayer. This was unacceptable to the Protestant monks of Scotland. They all met at Greyfriars to sign a convent against the Crown's religion. In the February of 1638, King Charles heard of this and sent his army to track down and crush the uprising. The Covenanters were rounded up and locked up within the walls of Greyfriars.
Covenanters are a very important group of people, and they're especially linked to Greyfriars. The Greyfriars Kirkyard and the Covenanters are absolutely together for much of their story. The Covenanters were effectively a group of Scots Protestants who didn't want royal interference in their religion. When the Reformation happened in Scotland, there wasn't a head of the Church of Scotland. In England, when the Reformation happened, you had Henry VIII took over and he became the main man. He became the head of the Church of England. King James I thought about perhaps becoming the head of the Church of Scotland, but decided against it. He was advised not to. His son Charles I wasn't quite as shrewd, didn't gauge public opinion terribly well, and he tried to bring in what we now know as Episcopalianism, and that didn't go down terribly well. Instead of rioting or instead of rebelling against the king, a group of concerned Scots got together and they signed this promise, this national covenant, where they basically said to King Charles I, we really like you as our king, but our religion's more important. This is our petition to you to say, please don't interfere with our religion. That's the national covenant. It was signed here on a February evening in 1638, actually inside the kirk, and the Covenanting movement was born in Scotland. Behind where I'm standing now, we have the Covenanters prison. Now, tourists, when they come and see Greyfriars today, they see a little sliver of land behind some locked gates with graves and tombs on either side. That wasn't the only area of the prison. The prison was a huge area of flat land, no tombs, they hadn't been put there yet, that stretched right along the back of the kirkyard, a large, open, flat area, very cold, very uncomfortable to live in.
The King's advocate, Sir George Bloody Mackenzie, was put in charge of the prisoners. He brutally tortured and executed 18,000 of them, publicly using false charges. The executed bodies had their heads severed and hung on the walls surrounding the prisoners. Mackenzie was a feared and hated, brutal man.
Sir George Mackenzie was in some ways a very enlightened man. He was the leading judge in Scotland, he was the Lord Advocate, He also had a very extensive library which formed the basis of the Advocates Library, but for many people he's not remembered as Sir George Mackenzie, he's remembered as Bloody Mackenzie, and he's got that rather dreadful name because he absolutely persecuted the Covenanters, and we have to remember this persecution was known as the Killing Times, based on his reputation.
In a sick twist of fate, after his death in 1691, George Mackenzie was buried in a mausoleum at Greyfriars, as if left to once again guard and persecute the prisoners in death, as he did in life. Many people within the paranormal world have suspected George Mackenzie of being a negative, aggressive spirit here that has attacked and inflicted wounds on so many people. This hypothesis was made stronger when on a cold, wet evening in 1998, a homeless man sought refuge from the elements within the graveyard. He broke into the Mackenzie tomb for shelter. He fell through the floor into the lower area where the coffin is kept. He claimed to be attacked by the full apparition of Mackenzie as he fled, fearing for his life. One of the theories is that Sir George Mackenzie's rage for the imprisoned Protestant monks is still so fueled that he attacks passers-by, mistaking them for the monks. Another theory was brought about because in the 1800s the graveyard was a prime target for grave robbers who came here to dig up recently buried bodies and sell them on to universities to experiment with. Mort safes were erected to stop this from happening. However, it is thought by many that this theft is what causes spirits here to become unrest and attack visitors. In more recent times, a group of youths broke into George Mackenzie's mausoleum and attacked Mackenzie's skeleton remains, removing the skull from the body. Since then, the attacks have reportedly gotten worse, with visitors experiencing punches, uncontrollable vomiting and urinating themselves, with feeling faint and dizzy. This is often accompanied by the sense of a large figure standing behind them. Could all these reports and injuries be psychosomatic, or is this evil, angry spirit still roaming these grounds? Things have become so bad that the city of Edinburgh has actually shut off part of the graveyard to the public and only allows controlled visits in fear for public safety. Later in the same year, vicar Colin performed an exorcism here. Later, he was convinced that something had followed him home and gave the impression that the exorcism failed. Just 2 days after the exorcism, Colin was found dead. People close to the vicar believe that the spirits of Greyfriars played a part in his passing.
I was just upset about it because he was a genuinely nice person, and he really did care for what he did, and he cared about the people that he was trying to help, and he took everything on board and took everything to heart. So it was really quite sad. He was a very, very special man. I think he was always prepared for that. I think in his own head he was always prepared for that. He always seemed to have company around him, and I don't know if that was people he helped in the past or what, I don't know, but I think he always had it in the back of his head that could happen and that it may happen. But I think for a man of his sort of talents, I think he just can accept it. It was almost like it was part of the job.
Another ghost that is said to roam Greyfriars Graveyard is that of Bobby, a Skye terrier. He became famous in Edinburgh in the 19th century because his master had died and was buried here. Bobby spent 14 years watching over his owner's grave. Sadly, on the 14th of January 1872, Bobby himself died, although he is still seen here by visitors in the form of a statue, and sometimes in the form of a white mist that still appears next to his owner's grave. Many films and books have been made about this famous dog, and the story still captures the hearts of those who hear it today. Like so many other famous locations, Greyfriars has inspired some great literature. It was sat within these walls that the names McGonagall, Moody, and even Thomas Riddle were copied from cold gravestones and given a new life in the Harry Potter story series by J.K. Rowling. Perhaps even she sensed there was something magical about the place.